Welcome. In another YouTube video entitled Biblical Genealogies Show Two Human Origins, I explained that the lifespans of the patriarchs can be used to show mathematically that the descendants of Adam and Eve married into an existing human race. In another video, I showed that pre-Adamic people, whose creation was described in Genesis 1, were created by descent, whereas God formed Adam and Eve from the ground. Two passages in Genesis may seem to contradict these conclusions due to the way some translators have rendered them into English. These passages are Genesis 2:7 and Genesis 5:1 through 3. Let us look at Genesis 2:7 in the King James Version and in the New International Version, because these verses differ, and I want to point out the correct rendering of this verse. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. KJV. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. New International Version, emphasis mine. The New International Version is correct in placing the indefinite article before man in its first occurrence, because if we read on in verse 8, we find out that it was a single man whom God breathed into, and it was a single man whom God put into the Garden of Eden. It seems that because the Hebrew Scriptures includes the article before the word man, the authors of the King James Version felt Moses was referring to the whole race. But according to Gesenius Hebrew grammar, the inclusion of the article can mean one member of a group or a portion of a group. In regards to the second occurrence of man in verse 7, the Hebrew language includes the article, and so the translator should also include it in this case. Now let us look at Genesis 5, verses 1 through 3. This is the book of the generations of Adam in the day when God created man. He made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, and he blessed them and named them man in the day when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his own likeness, according to his own image, and he named him Seth. Every translation that I have read was similar to this one, this NASB. I believe that they all contain at least one error, and here is why. The word man and the name Adam are both the same word in Hebrew. All the translations agree on the translation of the first occurrence of the word in question. I also agree. The second time this Hebrew word occurs in this passage, it was translated man, but I believe it should be translated Adam, not man, because the context requires it. They had just mentioned Adam, so the reader would expect the next occurrence of the word to refer to the same entity, in this case Adam. Where the text says he created them male and female, it makes reference to Adam's wife, Eve, who also was a member of Adam's race. Then we read, and he blessed them and named them man in the day when they were created. This name Adam was to apply to Adam and all his descendants. In Bible times, the meaning of the name was very important. In this case, God named Adam and his descendants the name of the pre-Adamites to indicate that Adam and his descendants also were men. And the Spirit states that he called them man in the day they were created. In other words, the author of Genesis did not want the reader to think that the descendants of Adam and Eve became man after they inbred with the pre-Adamites, but before that. I believe this table from my book, New Evidence for Two Human Origins, Discoveries that Reconcile the Bible and Science, shows that God calls the part the same name as the whole. Now I will reread Genesis 5, 1-3, the way I believe it should be translated. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day when God created Adam, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, and he blessed them and named them man in the day when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his own likeness, according to his own image, and he named him Seth. Moses described these descendants of Adam similarly to Genesis 1:27-28, because he wanted to emphasize that Adam and Eve and their descendants were also man, and that God had also blessed Adam's descendants. In conclusion, the NIV translation of Genesis 2 verse 7 is the correct one, and therefore it does not contradict the dual origin thesis. Genesis 5, 1-3, if properly translated and understood, does not contradict the dual origin thesis. For other videos on the subject of harmonizing the Bible and science, please click on a video at the end of this one, or see my blog at garytmayer.blogspot.com. Thanks for listening.